All right, so today we're diving into a really unusual research paper. It makes this huge prediction about a global earthquake in 2025, but here's the twist. Its source isn't geology. Nope. It's this fascinating, unconventional theory that connects planetary alignments, ancient wisdom, and even our own consciousness to the fate of the Earth. It's a wild ride for sure, so let's just jump right in. Okay, so let's not bury the lead. Right at the heart of this paper is this absolutely startling claim. The authors are predicting a specific day in 2025 that they say will trigger a global wave of earthquakes and tsunamis, creating what they call a greater day of panic for humanity. So you have to ask, what could possibly lead them to that kind of conclusion? Well, the answer they give isn't in our tectonic plates. They argue it's written in the stars. So here's the thing. The theory says the trigger for all of this isn't geological at all, it's celestial. The paper points to a very, very specific and supposedly super rare series of astronomical alignments that they believe will put immense, unbelievable stress on our planet. And the authors get super specific. They pinpoint this critical window in 2025. It all starts, they say, with a series of smaller, sequential earthquakes from January to April that kind of soften up and weaken the Earth. Then, the pressure really builds from late March into July, when all the planets cluster together on one side of the solar system. And all that tension? They're predicting it'll all come to a head on two specific dates, April 12th and 13th. Now, this whole idea of the planets clustering together is really central to the theory. It's based on a concept from Vedic astrology called Kala Sarpa Yoga. This is when all the planets are essentially hemmed in on one side of the Earth. The paper's argument is that this creates this just massive cosmic imbalance, focusing all the planetary forces on just one half of the globe. And get this, there's another layer to it. On these exact dates, the paper claims that both the Sun and the Moon are in what's called a CUSP state. That means they're basically caught in between zodiac signs. The thinking here is that this leaves them without their usual cosmic support, kind of adrift and unstable. And all of this is happening during a full moon, which they say just makes the whole situation that much more volatile. Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting. The paper brings up this fascinating kind of duality, two different ways of seeing the cosmos. On one hand, you've got the static zodiac, the familiar 12 signs that we're all supposedly misaligned with right now. But on the other hand, they talk about a moving zodiac, which includes a hidden 28th constellation. And it's this other, almost secret constellation that they claim holds the key to the whole solution. So how in the world do the authors connect all these different dots? Well, they use their own unique method they call the 5D framework. And to really get it, we're going to have to learn a bit of their lingo. So the foundation for everything they're talking about is this concept they call philosophology. You can almost think of it as a research philosophy that just refuses to stand in one lane. It's all about combining modern science with traditional and ancient wisdom to try and solve these huge problems.
All right, so within that big picture philosophy, they use a very specific tool called a Gurmukhi. This is the actual system they use to, analyze, and this is crucial to balance what they describe as cosmic light and sound energies.
But you might be wondering, how do these energies actually affect the real physical world? Well, the paper points to this field called cymatics, which is the study of visible patterns that are created by sound. The whole idea is that if sound can create these visible patterns, then maybe, just maybe, the right vibrations could be used to fight back against the destructive vibrations of an earthquake. Okay, so if the problem is this huge cosmic imbalance, then what's the solution, right? Well, as you can probably guess, the paper's answers are just as unconventional as the problem they're describing, and they involve both sound and the stars. The paper uses this really powerful analogy to describe the threat. It's like a hammer. It says the danger isn't just one single event, but a series of smaller, repeated hits, those are the sequential earthquakes, that weaken the planet's crust, kind of setting the stage for one big, harder hit in April 2025. And this is where that Gurmukhi framework comes back into play. It breaks everything down, categorizing the planets into these different energy types. According to the paper, that 2025 alignment creates a really severe imbalance, where the sound energy planets just totally overwhelm the light energy ones. So naturally, the solution they propose has got to be all about restoring that balance.
So, how do you fix a cosmic problem? Well, the paper lays out this pretty fascinating three-step solution. First, on the cosmic level, you shift your focus to Abjet. That's the 28th constellation that sits outside the whole chaotic alignment. Second, on a tech level, you use cymatics to develop vibration-based defenses. And third, on a deeply human level, you use spiritual practices like meditation and prayer to counteract the global panic.
But why all this talk about a moving zodiac? Well, it's because our solar system is not just sitting still. I mean, look at that number. The paper reminds us that we are hurtling through the galaxy at an incredible speed, over 800,000 kilometers per hour. And it's this constant, immense motion, they argue, that's exactly why we need a dynamic cosmic map to even begin to understand our place in the universe. But, you know, this whole prediction for 2025, it isn't actually the paper's only point, not by a long shot. In fact, you could say they're using this wild prediction to make a much, much bigger argument, that we really need a fundamentally different way of thinking about science and global threats.
Yeah, at its very core, the paper is really calling for us to break down the walls between our different systems of knowledge. It argues that modern science by itself just can't see the whole picture. The only way forward, according to them, is to integrate all three: modern science, traditional knowledge, and yep, ancient wisdom.
All right, so let's just pull this all together. What are the key takeaways from this whole framework? First, that earthquakes might have triggers that have nothing to do with geology, that solutions could be found in a moving zodiac and these hidden constellations, that imbalances in cosmic light and sound energies can cause real physical stress on our planet, and maybe most mind-blowing of all, that human consciousness itself, things like prayer and meditation, is actually presented as a real tool for mitigation.
So, in the end, whether you see this whole thing as a prophecy or maybe just a really fascinating thought experiment, it leaves us all with a pretty provocative question. You know, as we face these incredibly complex global challenges, what role is there for this kind of unconventional, out-of-the-box thinking? And how open should we really be to ideas that come from way, way outside the mainstream? That's the real challenge this paper leaves us with.